Hi there, it's Archie. I'm back to the ADHD Care podcast. I hope I find you well today. I'm joined by Tim MacWilliam today on our podcast episode today, and we are discussing Tim's journey, being later in life with ADHD. In Tim's case, that was at the age of 58. So Tim's written a book which is entitled "Sitting Still, Timmy: A Lifetime of Undiagnosed ADHD," and in there he's basically describing his life of living with undiagnosed ADHD, subsequently to then being diagnosed, as I said, at the age of 58. So today I want to discuss with Tim about his journey, his life experiences, and exactly what made him go through the assessment process, particularly at that age, and what are some of the challenges that he's had to face over the years. So I'm going to bring Tim on our online platform now.
Hi there.
Hello.
Hello, gotcha.
Hi,
All
how are
right.
you?
I'm good, thank you. Just put
Good.
my
Can you
phone
see
off.
me and hear me okay?
I can. Can you do the same to me?
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you fine. Are you on a phone, tablet, computer? What are you
I'm
using?
on, I'm on a computer.
Oh, on your computer. Perfect. Amazing. Let me just turn you up. Okay.
I'm using
Amazing.
I'm using some Bluetooth these ear things. So if you can hear those, okay?
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you fine. It's just that
Good.
I'm going to cut out the feedback in a sec. So I think because obviously our microphones are switched on at the same time, but usually what I'll do when I'm talking, I'll switch off my mic and then, yeah, do it that way.
Okay.
Nice to meet you, Tim.
And you, lovely to see you, Archie. Good.
Amazing. And I was really, really excited to bring you on, particularly just to talk to you about your journey of living with undiagnosed ADHD up until the age of 58.
That's amazing. Yeah, I was funny. Just you go through the whole of your life wondering what's going on, what's wrong with yourself, and is there something different about you? And you made you feel a bit silly and stupid, and you're not. And then suddenly, out of the blue, several decades later, you get the answers to
Amazing.
what's going
Yeah.
on.
Of course, yeah, yeah. And also you've got this book that you've just written, which is entitled Sitting Still Timmy, A Lifetime of Undiagnosed ADHD, just capturing your journey and how you've lived with this condition up until this age where you've eventually got the diagnosis. So I'll be referencing a lot in terms of the book that you've written and certainly about your life experiences, certainly. So what a way to start. If we maybe just talk about in your book, there's a powerful statement that you open up in the book, which is about your hidden gifts of people with ADHD. Would you mind just sort of sharing some of the moments from your childhood, particularly, um, just in terms of some of these hidden gifts that you describe of ADHD?
Well, I think it was just a determination to succeed in life. And when you're not doing so well with your academic life, you have to find a different way to get through. And I think I did at school. And even though, like at school, I left with no qualifications whatsoever, I went into a dead end job because I was promised a good job if I passed my exams, but I didn't. And I knew I hadn't, but I went to it anyway. And so instead of having this dead end job, I spent all my spare time running a business for buying and selling football memorabilia. So things like program scarves, souvenirs, autographs, and I got really renowned for doing that. And so I actually made my own business, first one out of nothing from that. And I wondered, just thinking outside the box, which people with ADHD do a lot, just by doing that, it really, really helps. And then kind of later on in life, I just went from dead end job to dead end job. And in the end, I just found my own business and started my own business. And I had to do that because I was made redundant with two small children under the age of 5. And I think, again, looking back, without knowing at the time, just the determination you had with for having ADHD, one of the gifts it gives you, that really helped me to get through because I would just knock on doors and I would think of different ways to get the business until people told me to get lost or worse than get lost. But it was just having the different ideas, and if one business they didn't want this kind of training, I'd offer a different kind of training just to get through. And I think a lot of people with ADHD have got this being an entrepreneur and they have these ideas and they think differently. And I think, I mean, as you'll know, people like Thomas Edison and Alexander Graham Bell, those guys had inventions, and they're all thought to have ADHD. People like Richard Branson as well. All these amazing
Yeah.
ideas that he's had over the years. So all those people. So I mean, some people don't think it should be seen in a negative way. It should always be seen in it as a positive thing. And certainly when I found out, I felt good about it at first. I thought, yeah, I'm glad I've been diagnosed to have this condition, if you can call it that.
Yeah. And if you go back to your childhood, what were some of the signs of ADHD that you may have overlooked at that time? And how did these signs manifest in your school life and relationships?
Well, I think when I was really, really small, I was hyperactive, running around the place, and I remember just, I think I just had this gas poker, and I just smashed it through the television one time, not in any violent way. I was just hyperactive, and my sister, she always used to stick up for me and sort of give me a chance to speak because I couldn't get heard. And then at school, I think I was made to feel a bit stupid, and I can remember one time this one of the kids at school, he got really upset and he just rushed out of school. And I thought, well, what can I do to help? And I went off and I followed him. It took me about 20 minutes to find him, found him in the churchyard, brought him back to school. He got taken away to be looked after. I got taken back to the classroom where the teacher just said, "Yeah, you can't go off school." Made me bend over in front of the whole class. I got hit with a slipper multiple times for punishment. And there were other times in my childhood I did silly things. I can remember just like stealing Mars bars and things out of the shop on the way home. Because the first time I think I did it accidentally, and I thought, oh, this is easy, and you do it again. And I thought, oh gosh, and so of course I got caught out. I look back at that, and I wonder if that was perhaps ADHD. Although you can possibly blame it for everything, can't you? Over the years, so I'm not quite sure what that was. And then I left school with no qualifications whatsoever because I just ducked and dived and kept myself away from trouble at school and did as minimum as possible because I went to a 1970s comprehensive where there were just fights going on and the teachers were useless or the teachers were having affairs with each other, and so we didn't get much of an education anyway. So someone like me was just like kind of ignored and just left to get on with it. And I left school, no qualifications, and kind of a couple of years later I thought, oh, I really should have done better at school. But I think again, if you got the right carrots. So if somebody had said to me, instead of you're going to go and work in a boring office, if they'd offered me a job working for the BBC or Capital Radio at that time, or even the local newspaper, I thought, yeah, I'll make a go of this. But I didn't have that. So I
Yeah.
think there was some kind of career night. My dad came back and said, "Oh, they want you to be a policeman." I said, "I don't want to be a policeman. That would be a rubbish policeman." And that was about as far as it went. Career days in the
Right.
1970s.
Oh, what was it that motivated you? Like fast forwarding to now, obviously being diagnosed at the age of 58. If you talk us through what was the realization, what was it that made you want to seek a diagnosis at the age of 58?
Well, it was a strange thing because I was getting depression. I thought it was depression, and I think sometimes depression can be misdiagnosed, or ADHD, or vice versa. And I've been out. I did this voluntary job at Norwich City Football Club. Came back and I was feeling really, really down. And I spoke to my daughter. My daughter is really highly qualified in mental health, and I just thought, I'm going to have to take these antidepressants on. I can't. I didn't really want to. And she just said, "Well, Dad, do you ever think you might have ADHD?" And I hadn't thought of it for a second. And I had a look at some books and went online and did some online tests and things. And it all made sense. The whole thing suddenly, it's like a bolt of lightning that my daughter, and this is probably about 2019, 2018 possibly. And even then, before lockdown, there was like a 2-year waiting list on the NHS. So I've managed to, we had a bit of savings. I used that to get a private diagnosis. And then a couple of years later, I got one with the NHS. But if it hadn't even my daughter given me that diagnosis, I'd probably be on some medication that would be totally unsuitable. So I just knew there was something going on. I wasn't sure what it was. And I thought, oh, is it depression or whatever? And I was just going through a difficult time. And then suddenly, just something clicked. Fortunately, my daughter, and for me, it all made sense. And when I told people that, yeah, they started remembering things back in my life, and when my parents would kind of think, well, we know he's not thick, we know he's clever, so why is he so useless at school? So those kind of things that come up with people with ADHD, if you can find the thing that makes them tick, then you're well away. But that was my story of being diagnosed. I wouldn't have thought about it, I don't think, until my daughter suggested it was the case.
Did you know much about ADHD before your daughter mentioned it to you?
No, hardly anything at all. But I've been on a first kind of learning curve on that. I mean, people that I've spoken to, I say, oh, I've got ADHD, and they think it's autism. They get the whole thing mixed up. Or they say, well, everyone's got ADHD, and you try and educate them best you can, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
And or some people just don't believe you. So, well, I've known you for years, and you haven't got that. Or how come you managed to do a radio show for 3 hours interviewing people? And you think, well, because you can concentrate, you can hyperfocus. If it's something that interests you, you can do it. There's a positivity from the whole thing. But yeah, I got some different. Most people, about 95% of the people, positive. Not everyone in my own family was that positive. Not everyone that I knew. I wondered about when I was writing the book. There was so much personal stuff in there. I wondered about whether I should go incognito, whether I should actually be do something else, just call myself something else. But I thought, in a penny in for a pound, I've got a lot of clients, I'm self-employed. What would they think? It's got to the point where I think, well, do I really mind what they think? You got to have your own life and just follow the path, really.
And what was it that motivated you to want to write this book, Sitting Still, Timmy?
Well, it was really, I think I just started, I like to write on bits and pieces, and I've just wrote a few articles here and there, thinking they might be good for a magazine. And I realised I had 3 or 4 articles sitting there. I thought I'd stitch them all together, and I did more and more. And eventually I thought, well, let's put it together, let's write a book, and just to try and help people. And it wasn't just to help people with the condition of ADHD, it was to help people, perhaps the families and the partners. Like Catherine, my wife, has written a chapter in there about her experiences and her difficulties that she's had with me. So that was probably the idea behind it. And I thought everyone's tale is unique. So mine, and I thought, well, there's been so much stuff through my life about whether I've been through difficult problems, I've done stupid things, said stupid things, got fired from jobs, stolen, had car accidents, all these things. I thought, well, what's the reason for it? And that made sense, and I thought that could really help people who may be waiting for their diagnosis and wondering if they've got the condition, or those that had it, or even their partners and family.
Yeah, you mentioned your wife Catherine there, so she plays a significant role in your story in the book, as you say. She wrote a chapter. How has your ADHD impacted you in your marriage, and what advice would you give to couples out there who are kind of navigating through the same journey that you went through with your wife?
I think originally, Catherine's been really just a lifesaver, almost literally, really, because she was glad to have a diagnosis, and we had difficulties, we had problems. I've gone off and got involved in other projects, and seemed one of the things I think with ADHD is you don't listen. It seems like you're not listening, but you're thinking of 3 things at once. And she would often say, "It's because you don't listen." Or we'd have problems when we went out with her. She said it was like having 3 children instead of 2. And we go out and I'd lose the car keys in the sea, or go out and forget my wallet, or we go out somewhere and and the car would run out of petrol. All those kind of things. I think eventually she realised, and she was relieved to have that particular diagnosis, and it made a difference to us, and it really helped our relationship, because a couple of times it does get on the brink, because if you don't talk, and I think some of the stuff associated with ADHD, like the daydreaming and sometimes the sensitivity as well, because people might say something to a person without a condition, it just bounces off them. But to us, the sensitivity, it can bounce around our brains for ages. I think she had to get used to that and not upsetting me. But I think for partners, the main thing is to be patient, but the main thing also is to be truthful. And I think one of the things I wrote in there is if you can stay with a partner with ADHD, you'll get something very special. You get like a more intense kind of love, more intense relationship, someone who's honest, protective, a good parent, someone that will always be there for you. But it still is a bumpy ride at times. So you have to take the good with the bad. But certainly getting the diagnosis is the key thing. And I mean, even simple things like I might think, great, I'll go out and make a cake or something, and then she goes in there and the kitchen looks like a bomb's hit it because there's icing on the ceiling, that kind of stuff. And you can either make a choice. I think this is the thing: make a choice as to whether you get angry about it, whether you laugh about it. And you can't blame everything on ADHD, but there's certainly something about it that maybe is the reason for the behaviour.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. And I think I'm sure there's other couples out there living through what you just described, with one of them not knowing that they might have ADHD. So let's move on to talk about your career. I think you touched on it briefly. So you said you worked as a radio presenter at one point.
Yeah, I had some work with local radio for a while. I did a weekly show for about 14 years in a radio station in Norwich. I also worked on Radio Norfolk for a little while, doing a Sunday afternoon show, playing show tunes. But my first kind of soiree into local radio was with a commercial radio station in Reading in the early 1980s. And I would do football reports for a non-league football team. I'd have to actually go out after the match, go to a phone box and call back to the studio because there were no mobile phones. And people would be waiting outside trying to get into the phone box when I'm on air trying to talk. I actually face palmed somebody one time and he fell over. All my notes went everywhere. And I had to make up the whole game. And I just went kind of blank. But at the same time, I thought, right, roughly what happens. I think at the end of it, I got the score wrong and everything wrong. But no one seemed to notice. And I just wonder, was anybody listening? Anyway, I spoke to the radio station manager on the Monday and he said, wow, that was really good. Because most people in your situation, they'll have hung up and pretended the line went down. You carried on, even though it didn't go well. So he said, yeah. So and he kept me on, and he gave me some more work after that.
So you did a radio show in a phone box.
well, this one, the first one, it was just doing football reports for the team. Later on, I was doing a show a bit like, I guess it's a bit like Jeremy Vine, where you'd play music and you'd have guests, local guests. And I also did another like a music show playing show tunes on BBC local radio for a while. My real job, and bizarrely for somebody with ADHD, my job, my career, what I've fallen into was working as a health and safety consultant. So can you imagine that? I'm talking about fire, food hygiene, health and safety. That's why some of my clients seeing this, but they've been pretty good about it. And I said, well, look, I see hazards and problems that others don't see because I think outside the box. But I think sometimes they realise if I'm in a meeting taking minutes and I kind of lose concentration, now they understand about it. But it's a weird thing. And I kind of fell into that career really and just grew. And I think it shows that if you've got the determination and that kind of concentration you get with ADHD, I managed to get through some pretty difficult health and safety exams to get my business going over the years, which I kept that going for 30 years. I think what it was is I couldn't sack myself. So I'd like to sometimes, but I couldn't sack myself. So I had my own work which is still going to this day, actually.
And then that leads us nicely on to you setting up MacWilliam Associates, which is your own company.
That's right.
What was the challenges that you encountered to setting up, your own business as an entrepreneur?
Well, I had no contracts at all. Just a place that effectively had fired me because they were cutting back, and they gave me a little retainer, and I just got the yellow pages of the phone books at that time with all the different hotels in, and I just went through from one place to the next to the next. They gave me business until they told me to get lost. But originally, I started my business out doing customer care stuff and management consultancy. But all they wanted was health and safety and food hygiene for the new regulations. and that's all they wanted because they had to have it. So I retrained and did that. I said, oh, they said, do you do that? I went, no, yes. I thought, yes, I will do that. I do that. When I got myself qualified quickly as possible, again, maybe ADHD fueled. And then I started going off my business in a completely different way that started actually making some money. But being out so much when my children are young, and even though you're your own boss, you're your own boss 24 hours a day, so you never know when the phone's going to ring, or you're going to lose a contract, or someone's going to phone up and say there's been a problem. So, and I think if you're just working for another company, they might get you might get fired, or the company might close. When you have your own business, you are really much sailing on your own, and you never know quite what's going to happen, or the next bill's going to be paid. So they're all problems. And I can remember one time, I think my daughter had just started a job, and I was changing a wheel by the side of the road, and my nose was streaming. One of my most important clients, he phoned me up by the roadside, and I had a terrible line, but all I knew, it was bad news. And he just said, oh, we're going to have a difficult conversation. I'm replacing you with another consultant. And so overnight, with a click of the fingers, one of my biggest clients are gone. And from there, you go home and you have a bit of a breakdown about it all. But again, with Catherine's support, pulled it around and managed to get some more contracts together. So that's the journey from that, and it's just working through difficulties in the early times, through recessions, and just more or less doing anything to get the work in. That's been the biggest challenge.
So your book, Still Timmy, I like the title, by the way, also serves as a self-help guide. What are some of the key advice, or what is some of the key advice you offer adults that are discovering that they might have ADHD, particularly later on in life, and how important is it to have a support system around you throughout that journey?
I think the main thing is acceptance. Acceptance is the key. Once you can accept you've got the condition, because I didn't when I first started. I thought I got this diagnosis, which I was really pleased for. I thought, no, I can't have ADHD. I went all through it thinking, no, I lost my keys in the sea. I lost lots of jobs. I've messed up relationships and all sorts. And I thought, yeah, I have ADHD. So having that acceptance and getting the right kind of advice as well, because you can go online, as you'll know, and there are hundreds and hundreds of pages, and there's stuff online and social media which perhaps don't give the best kind of advice and the best kind of help and support. So finding those the key. And one of the main things I'd say is just surround yourself with people that accept you as you are, accept you as having ADHD. I mean, since I've been diagnosed, sometimes when I do something stupid, or I just want to be me, want to be a bit eccentric, I sometimes think, oh, people judging me because I've now been diagnosed. And so I found that a little bit difficult. But it is important. It's not always easy. It's not always easy, particularly when you've got members of your own family that perhaps aren't as supportive as they might be. And if you live with those people, they don't support you completely. That is a tricky one, because it's all very well to say surround yourself with people that accept you and love you as you are, but life isn't always like that. But my family's mostly been kind of best supported. And if you're in a relationship with somebody who doesn't accept it, it's difficult, I know, but probably need to move on and find somebody that doesn't tolerate you, but they celebrate you. They celebrate who you are, and perhaps you're not a boring person. You've got special kind of gifts in a lot of ways, and also to be accepting and tolerant. But it's not always easy. And if you have a row and something goes wrong, it's down to them to forgive, and you, of course. If they won't forget and forgive and move on, then perhaps again, it's not the right relationship, not the right person for somebody who's got ADHD.
100%. No, I agree. Being diagnosed at, I keep going back to age 58. At that point, because I see adults as well that are diagnosed later on in life. For you personally, did you have, because people have mixed feelings, emotions, being told that you've got ADHD at that age, and you sometimes you look back, don't you? You start thinking, gosh, had I had this in my early life or when I was in school, maybe my life would have turned out this way. There's some regret, there's some anger, there's some acceptance, there's a lot of emotion. What was your initial emotion for you, like during that phase post diagnosis?
I was really happy at first. I thought, great, now I've got a reason for it. And I thought everyone would rally round. Mostly they did. I was really pleased. But then I thought I had a bit of a wobble and I thought, is this real? I had a second diagnosis. There was no doubts. But as time's gone by, I thought, I wonder if I hadn't possibly just kept quiet about the whole thing because of some of the way people might judge you later on. But people are mostly kind of supportive with you. But I think I saw an ADHD consultant, and she said, I think wrote thousands of days you've already been living, and she ripped it off the flip chart, threw it to the ground, and said, "They're the days that have gone. You can't do anything about those. Yes, you might have done better at school. You might have had better jobs. You might have got your dream career. You might have had better relationships, but they're gone. You can't do anything about that. Don't look at the road behind you. Look at the road ahead of you." And that's what I think I've tried to do. But it is almost, I think it was described to me as like a bereavement, because you think, yeah, I'm relieved to have the actual diagnosis, but all that time lost, not knowing. Although if I say I'd been diagnosed at school when I was young, and I think my family at that time, there'd have been like a stigma to it. And also, goodness knows what horrible medication they might have put me on just back in the early 1970s. So I'm quite glad that I didn't have that. And even when I left school with no qualifications, my mum just said, "Oh, I wish I'd sent you to the grammar school," but she didn't get it. So I don't do school. School doesn't do me. I mean, I tried to just get away as quickly as possible, and I was thrown out of classes, and I would just go home instead, best I could if I could get away and just sort of sign the register and go home. Back then, but it is there's some good and bad. But if you can focus on the road ahead, that's the best way forward.
And with that, since you've got the diagnosis, what support have you had in terms of managing your symptoms, your ADHD?
I've had some really good support, particularly from the local NHS department in Norwich, in Norfolk. They've been really supportive, really good. I've been working with them, and they give some good counselling. And I went along. I got my book on the wall, and they came along with me. And it was nice that I could share that with them, because some of the guys there, I think they probably have ADHD themselves. And I don't know about you, but I find that if you have ADHD and you meet people with the same condition, it's almost like you're birds of a feather. You get on really, really well. You can relax. You can do silly things, say silly things, get up and down, do what you want, walk off, and we just kind of gathered in a way together, and it's all fine. But those guys at Norfolk and Suffolk ADHD, I think sometimes mental health services in the NHS get a bad rap. But that's purely because there isn't enough funding and there isn't enough people working there, so they're stretched to the absolute limit. But I was really pleased to work with them, and they were just giving me kind of acceptance, and they give me different medication, which I'd refuse to take and then not and then take it. They were never judgmental. I think that's another key thing. So, and they would help with different thoughts and ideas, and I think just the positivity as well that they give. But mostly from the NHS, I've seen quite a few different therapists and counsellors. Some straight away. I say to them, I might see, because most of my counselling and therapy has been done on Zoom post kind of lockdown, which is great in some ways because you can meet people from different all around the world, so chat to anybody instead of being local. But I go online like this and I say, "Well, so tell me about yourself." I say, "I've got ADHD." And they say, "Oh, who told you that? Dr. Google?" And I say, "No, don't. Harley Street psychiatrist in the NHS." And they say, "Well, you're just like Chris Packham." I said, "No, he has autism." And I just think, I've got like another 45 minutes to this session. So I go through them quite quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you got to get to the right people to get you.
That's it. And I think what you're doing is remarkable. You've written a book, certainly highlighting ADHD and your life experiences of living with it, and then later on being diagnosed with it. And certainly, I know there's a lot of adults out there. As much as we can sit here and say we offer diagnosing ADHD, but I don't think we are. I think the awareness of ADHD that people are having now, they're going online, they're talking, people are much more open about it. It's encouraging people to seek help and go forward. And then subsequently, some of them are being diagnosed with it. So I think what you are doing is great to share your story, particularly on this platform, through your book, through groups that you do and whatever you do, and I admire that. And that's what that was one thing that really struck me when you contacted us, when you reached out to us, and just wanted to bring you on to share and speak to you about your journey and your story. Do you? Let's talk about the parenting side of yourself. Do you want to tell us about your kids, how old they are, and if any of them have maybe ADHD or autism at all?
I don't think so. Certainly, they've never been diagnosed. But on parenting wise, I mean, they're in their 30s now, so they're both grown up. But when they were small, I think there were challenges as me as a parent. And I remember losing one of my children on beach in Lowestoft, crowded beach, kids everywhere. And I think there'd been the James Bulger atrocity, and my daughter was the same age. And you have these little curly child leads, one yank and they were gone. But I'd been looking, I thought I mustn't lose her today, keep hold of her. And we were on the beach and I lost her. Crowded beach, lost her, looking everywhere for her. In the end, I was charging around asking people, have you seen this little girl in an orange dress, what her name was? And eventually this lady called out from across an ice cream stall and said, she's sitting on your shoulders. And she was actually sitting on my shoulders. I've been looking for her everywhere. So that kind of thing was a parenting challenge. And I think sometimes because I wasn't that academic, that must have been difficult for them. But I do think, I don't know, that people with ADHD are loving and caring and good parents. And I'm always there for them, and I always put them as number one priority through their lives. And I think Catherine had to do the lion's share of it, to be the grown up, if you like. And I was the one that perhaps just did all the easier stuff. But she said that in her bit in the chapter that she would almost cry with frustration because I would forget when the kids after school clubs would end, and she'd tell me time after time after time, and I would forget. So those kind of things. You don't want to, and then you feel ashamed that you've done it. You think you're really annoyed. But now I think it's kind of metamorphosized into masking. So if I've got an appointment, I think, well, I'm bound to mess up getting there, so I'll get there 3 hours early. So I'll do that. So I'll get on an early train in case one gets missed, and I always catastrophize about going somewhere. So you kind of overdo that. And like I went to a funeral a few weeks back, and I thought, I've got a cup of tea. I'm probably going to spill my tea down my shirt. I'll bring another shirt. I'll bring another tie, and I will get there really, really early, just in case I'm late. So all that time, it's kind of a masking. And when you're out and about, people say, "We don't seem like you got ADHD," but in your mind, you're kind of dancing around, and your mind's in 3 different places. But you're just doing that thing where you can mask it, and you can just acting, and that's a tiring thing. That's a tiring thing to keep masking the whole time. That's when it's quite nice when you meet people that accept you, or people who've got ADHD themselves.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the whole masking, because I think in your career, I think you've done it as well. Like there's a few things you mentioned to me, and I was like, that sounds like masking. Where, your traits might not appear as impairing in terms of your work and things, but it's what goes on behind it that people don't see, and how like the whole improvisation, what you did with the on the radio show when you were in the phone booth and improvising and all of that is masking, essentially.
Absolutely, yeah. And I would always forget people's names on the radio, but I would always get away with that as well. I'd have post-it stickers everywhere. I think I only got found out once. I think it was the last show I did on the radio station, and the regular guest, and he told me about a film. Because he was a film reviewer, and he told me about a film he reviewed. And it was like the words are bouncing off a dry sponge. And I asked him the same question, and he said, "You weren't listening there, were you, Tim?" I thought that was the only time I ever got found out. Right, but he was kind of a good friend by then. But that's quite an interesting thing just
Yeah.
to get there. Again, with the radio, you're going to mess up. So you just put so many different safety stops in there to make sure that you can get away with it. Because I think people of all walks of life think they're getting away with it a lot. And maybe we do with ADHD a lot because it's sensitivity and also low self-esteem as well. That I think
Yeah.
a lot of people with ADHD tend to have.
Yeah.
We think they're not good enough.
There are things, if you think about your challenges that are ingrained in you and go back to your childhood, that you probably think, this is just me. That's part of your personality. So, which leads me to my next point, my question actually. Did you ever question what's the point of getting diagnosed later in life at the age of 58? I've lived a life and this is just who I am. What difference is that going to make? Because that's something some people might be asking themselves, listen to you, or going through different challenges, not knowing that they might have undiagnosed ADHD. And what would you advise? What would you say to those people?
I think it's definitely get the diagnosis, find out for sure. I was glad that I did. There was no question for me that think, no, that time is gone, and I just ignoring it. I can understand people thinking, well, I've got by so far. The only way I thought of that in some ways was then when I started trying different medications. I thought, well, I've got through 58 years without medication. Why do I need it? And I've had quite a difficult journey with the different ones I've taken on and off. I keep a diary, just a scribbled diary about how I feel in the days. And for me, I'm still kind of on that journey to see which is the best medication. And I'm thinking, I mean, some people really need it. I'm not sure I do. And that's from that 58 years. And I'm on a bit of a streak now of not taking the medication. And I find getting out and about, walking, strong coffee, those kind of things that give you a bit of a boost. Although I have found my diet's gone downhill since I've stopped taking the medication, so maybe that's a downside to it. But no, I think I can understand that point, but I would really recommend that you embrace it and just explore the possibilities because it could give you a new lease of life, and you might actually look through some of people's stories and their journeys and information online. And you think, oh yeah, that's me. This person's like that. It doesn't mean you're. I don't know. I kind of. I don't see it as any kind of stigma at all. I see it as something that's a positive in my life now. I see it as something that's I can actually take forward and think, okay, that's me. That's now. If I'm on a train, I want to tube sometimes. I want to just sing or something. I allow myself to. If like this morning, there's cost, isn't it, to ADHD? You're forever buying the wrong thing or whatever. Like pretty much every morning, I make Catherine the wrong tea. So this morning, made her a cup of tea. She doesn't like tea. I should know that by now. So I throw it away. She likes green tea. So I don't know how many tea bags it's cost me over the life, but there is like a cost to having ADHD, and I don't get parking tickets. I was down by the Chesil Beach, and I went in the park, and because I've got ADHD, I'm putting in those really ridiculously complicated parking meters. You got to put in your number plate and how many hours you're going to be, and then your credit card. And I think I put in the wrong license plate because I was too quick, and I get like a 50 quid fine. So that again, ADHD, what do you call it, an ADHD cost or whatever it might be.
True. The cost of ADHD, that's
Yeah.
something not really spoken about. And clearly, I think you're outlining it and you're giving clear, good examples as well for people to see, because that's what I was just going to ask you in terms of how it affects you on a day to day. And I think you're highlighting it very nicely there. What other have you kind of linked in with any other groups at all for adults that have ADHD in a similar situation to you? I know you talked about the support you've had for the NHS through, it sounds like more one-to-one support. Have you had any groups support at all?
Well, I work online with ADHD UK, are very good, and also the ADHD Foundation. And I've met up with a couple of guys like Tim Keever, who's down in Portsmouth, and worked with his organisation. And I've met with those guys a few times. People back at the NHS, I am going to start working with a group down there and chatting with them over sort of different problems they might have, or just hearing like an experienced voice. So I tend to find that when you go online to different groups, that you talk to one or two people and you become kind of friends, distant friends over social media or by texting. And so they're almost like little groups that get you. There was some guys in America that contacted me that I was in contact for a while, and they had a problem because I think they said they were the grandparents and their son was a real problem with drugs. The little girl was hyperactive and they were tearing their hair out. And so we just had a lot of sessions together. I'm no counselor, I'm no expert at all, don't pretend to be, but just talking to somebody that had been through some experiences. And I think I just said, well, I put them in touch with somebody who deals, I think, in America with people who have ADHD and drug problems. And the little girl that I think she went off and did some sports, even at 4 or 5 years old, took up something like martial arts that got her mind focused. And they were, wow, they hadn't thought of that. So just talking to somebody who kind of accepts it and gets it on a different kind of level and can be helpful. But I'm always open to joining up new groups and speaking to people and, but finding the right ones. There's quite a few out there at the moment.
And you mentioned about ADHD Foundation, ADHD UK. What sort of work, collaborative work are you doing with them?
I'm not working with them as such. It's like they're like groups of people that you can say, like, I found it, I don't know why, but I found it difficult in recent months. I feel worse. My symptoms are worse. My mental health's worse at weekends. So I just put a message out there to the message board. Who else finds this? Who else finds that there are problems at weekends? And a whole lot of people came back and said, yes, they did, why they had it, and different stuff with medication, and reasons they get low at weekends. And so we had a little group chat with that. So within those things, they're not like official groups as such, but if you've got a problem or any kind of thoughts, you put it out there, they nearly always come back to you. Although I think the guy that actually runs message boards is a bit too strict sometimes, the stuff that goes out there. So no, you can't mention your book. Yes.
Yeah. Have you done a book signing yet?
We went along to. We didn't do an official book signing. We went to the award ceremony. There's some people there I did some book signings for, but I've signed some copies in different bookshops around this region, and I'm quite happy to sign any as such.
Yeah, and yeah, thanks for sending me a copy of your book. Not signed, but still have a copy of it.
I shouldn't. I meant to. Yes, I've got one here that's signed. I should have sent it to you. Yeah.
Amazing. Just reflecting on your experiences, I think you've done a lot of reflecting on this podcast today. What are some of the life lessons that you've learned from living with ADHD? And yeah, I'm sure there's positives within that and something you've embraced. And I think I'm getting a lot of resilience from you. That's what kept you going. That's what made you navigate your lifetime of living with ADHD without knowing that you had it.
Excuse me. There's a chapter in the book, and it's called Suicide, Grief, and Self-Harm. So a lot of people read the book and think that's really funny. They read about stuff about me breaking things in a shop or doing something silly. There's also quite some shade in there as well. And I think some of the life lessons there is just not to give up. And also, I think a life lesson is to recognize, to admit there's a problem. Because if you don't, you can't get help until you have till you admit you've got a problem. So there was kind of so I kind of know where to go a couple of times. There's some really kind of some dark moments that I got through in those times, but it was all kind of just what was going on around the time.
Yeah,
like a relative died and a dog died. I was having problems with family members at home, and that's way before diagnosis. And so at that point, I was just inwardly screaming. I didn't know what to do, where to go. Now I've got the diagnosis. I think, oh yeah, okay, I get that now. So you go into a weird kind of world. So I do think having a diagnosis and having that, that can help you along the way from getting somewhere really, really dark and horrible and getting you out of that. So that was the biggest life lesson that I've learned, and that I think it's okay to be you. It's okay to behave like you do and accept how you are. I think the older you get, like I wake up most mornings worrying about stuff, worrying about money, about work, about family, about stuff that doesn't need worrying about. There's a bit in the book about I worry about used to love walking on the beach, and in some of the sands of the Norfolk and Suffolk beaches, all around the UK actually, little things in there called weaver fish. They've got poisonous spines. You stand on them, it really hurts. It's one of the worst pains there is, apparently. And I've been walking around beaches for 50 years, never been stung. Touch wood. But I started worrying. I'm thinking, I took my kids to the beach when they were 5. They're going to be stung by these things. So I started worrying about what might have happened, even though it can't possibly have happened. So again, it's just dealing with some of the anxiety and some of the worries that you might have. And that's the life lesson. Once you've got diagnosis, you think it's okay to do that. And I found the older I get, the less worried I get. And I try to use a mantra. Although things matter, most things don't. And most things you worry about, they won't happen. So try not to worry about those things and live the life best you can.
Do you have siblings at all?
I do have a brother and a sister. My sister, since I've kind of been diagnosed, we discovered she hasn't had a diagnosis, but she definitely has ADHD. Oh yeah, in some ways her actual ADHD, the outward, vibrant, crazy bits of her, even though she's very intelligent, she's got like a PhD. If we stand next to the sea, she'll walk the wrong way. She gets lost. In a driving test, the examiner told her to turn left at the next junction. She turned into someone's driveway because she took it literally. She rushes into the sea with all her clothes on without having a split the towel or even change of clothing. So she's got all those kind of things. She'll go into, we went to, I mentioned a funeral earlier. We were at a funeral a couple of weeks back, and she said to me, I want to sing really loudly. I said, okay. We're nearly through this now. So it's we had other things. I've done this thing now. I've got my feet now. I wear quite big shoes. I can twitch around my feet within my shoes, so it doesn't look like I'm twitching. But she likes to do the singing thing. So yeah. So my sister has, brother not. My mother and father, I don't think so. My aunt Alice, who went across to America in like 1915. I think she could have got on the Titanic, but she didn't, fortunately. She went across on another liner to live in America. And she was really outgoing when I met her. She would kind of be grabbing a steering wheel off my dad laughing, and she was the life and soul of the party. And it's funnily enough, she actually went along, when she went to America, she worked for Thomas Edison. And as I mentioned earlier, we thought he had ADHD.
Yeah.
So I think she did. My sister has, but she won't get diagnosed. And my mother, she sadly had quite bad epilepsy. I do think, I understand there's some comorbidity between epilepsy and ADHD. So maybe there's a link there for me getting it. Yeah.
What would your mom and dad say if they found out that you had been diagnosed with ADHD?
I don't know. I think I'm not so sure. It's a child. They've probably been loving and supportive, but at the same time, they're worried what everybody else is thinking. What would the neighbours think? What were their parents thinking? I mentioned my mum had epilepsy. Her dad was a doctor. He covered it over. He didn't help as much as he should have done. It was like a family secret, a family shame, as opposed to something that should have been sorted out. And I think the same kind of thing might have been with me. And excuse me, my wife Catherine, she said on my website, there was a question and answer thing, and she actually said, "I'm glad my parents aren't around to see this, some of the personal stuff, because she's not sure what they would have thought." So it's hard to know. I think maybe a bit of denial, being loving and supportive, but perhaps they wouldn't tell anybody. It wouldn't have been a different era. Those that born in the 1920s, born in the 1920s, because even from that thing, well, probably there's no such thing. It's all in your imagination or in your mind. Or they might have thought, oh, that's the reason why he never sat still.
Well, any professionals listening out there, particularly GPs or anyone primary care, secondary care, usually some people have said to me, I've been to my GP and I've described some symptoms, not saying ADHD, but they probably would have been dismissed at that point. And sometimes you've heard some GPs, not all, I just have to be careful, who might have said to the person who's coming to them and describing what might be ADHD as, well, you've got a career, you've got a family, you've done well in life, you can't have ADHD. What would you say to that?
I think you've got to point them in the direction of those that have been successful, like Richard Branson, like people who work in broadcasting, people like Adrian Chiles, who's well known for having ADHD, and he's been on TV. He's done really
Yeah.
well. He's done stuff with money, and there's plenty of other broadcasters and those. You have to point out the successes that you can do and what is possible. But not everyone can have that success. Some people are more affected by it. So it's pointing out what the positivities of it are. But there are people that don't understand and don't get it, and maybe they're unlucky because they've got closed minds. They're lucky they don't have to worry about it too much. I do see that sometimes. I look around and I see all these people who haven't got ADHD, and they can concentrate. They can have their lives differently, and it's kind of made me look inwards quite a bit about how my life is and my own thoughts and what people think of me, my behaviour. They used to think, oh, it's just the way Tim is, but now it's more, oh, I wonder if it's ADHD.
And lastly, what future projects are you working on relating to ADHD awareness, and how do you hope that your book and your work will impact on the ADHD community and the public understanding of it?
Well, my next project is I'm really hoping, I've given my book to a local university. They've called me up and they've said they would like me to go in there and do some potential lecturing on ADHD to the mental health nursing community. So I'm really excited about that. They can have my book on sale as further reading for their people doing the degree. And I'm also going to work with some people, again, with the NHS and look into working ways with them. There isn't a follow-up book. The only thing I thought I could do possibly is do something fictional now about. I don't think there's anything out there with a fictional person, ADHD superhero, or somebody who's a super sleuth who thinks outside the box. But there's nothing like that. But I'm really excited with the thing with the university, because that's it gives acceptance to the book. Because when you write something, you think, again, low self-esteem, you think it's going to be rubbish, or you might be rubbish, and you need people around you to support you and say it's good. And when they say it's good, you still don't believe them. But having this kind of impact and this kind of stuff back from people, like, I mean, I think I got thrown out of school with no qualifications. So now potentially I'm going to be lecturing people doing a degree. So it just shows you what you're capable of with this condition.
Yeah, absolutely. How you turned your life around, and turning what might be viewed as negative to positive. Certainly using the power of your diagnosis to share that with other people, and I think the awareness certainly is definitely still needed. Certainly, some of the stigmas and the things you described to us, we still come across it. We still hear it. Not everyone's going to embrace your diagnosis, particularly at the age that you got it, because some people still view it as something that only exists in young people, for example. That's one of the many kind of misconceptions that people have. If people want to reach out to you, do you want to maybe let us know your website and contact details?
Yeah, it's go timmacwilliam.com. That's Tim MacWilliam, MAC. Or you can go to stilltimmy.com as well. And that'll all get over to me with all my contact details on.
So what inspired you to create this title, Sit Still Timmy?
It was my parents the whole time. They would say, sit still, Timmy, the whole time. Sit still, be quiet, shut up, sit still. So I thought, yeah, that's the one. It has to be really. And I think people with ADHD are always told, there's a young age, a lot of negativity, we're always told to sit still, be quiet, sit down. They don't know for us that it's impossible quite often.
Yeah. If anyone wants to purchase the book, or anyone out there wants to get a copy of your book, where can they find it?
It's easier on Amazon. But if you don't want to buy it off Amazon, you can actually get it from Waterstones online, or from Foyles as well. It's in certain branches of WH Smith's and Gerald as well. But all the links to buy the book are on the website.
Yeah. And any more future publications at all?
Possibly, I might. You look through a book and you think, I want to change that chapter or add a chapter. So there might be some additional chapters to go on as we go through this. I've been keeping a diary, so I wanted about publishing a diary of how I've been over the last couple of years, because people think, oh yeah, he's great now, he's cured, he's better. He's level with it now. But in reality, it isn't that simple, is it? You do go peaks and troughs up and down, and I've had still had some highs and lows. And so I think possibly I'm going to look for my diary and see how legible it is, and maybe that's the next project.
Has anyone reached out to you, being inspired by your journey and your story?
I have had a few people that have actually, yes, it's really struck a chord with, and I've had somebody from another university in London who'd recently retired actually, and he just said, "Well, thank you for writing this book." He didn't want to be named or anything because he'd retired, but he was really impressed that I'd done that. And people who do read it, they just say the main thing is honesty, how honest I was, and I'm glad I was, because there's awful lot of really personal stuff in that. There's stuff in that, particularly when we talk about addictions and so forth. I still think I wish I'd left it out, but I'm still at the same time glad I left it in, because it has to be all or nothing.
Yeah, no, yeah, and that's usually what I hear when I bring some guests on this podcast, and when they share their stories. Some of them might be quite personal, but the thing is, it's yeah, if you're comfortable with that, then certainly it will resonate with some people out there. Your honesty, and that's what people connect to the most as well. So, before I let you go, is there anything else you want to share with us?
I think the main thing is in that book, it just shows you that you can go across all kinds of problems in life. And I mean, the end of the book is me basically. I go into a hotel. I'm working in hotels, in and out of dead end jobs, and I go to a hotel in Beaconsfield. And in my first night there, I'm so upset and sad. Someone breaks into my room because I'm a member of staff. I get up, I pack my stuff in my bag. I have like a single shift. I've walked out, but as I walk out, I see the Norwich City football team are there for the cup final at Wembley the next day. And I see the manager there, and he smiled, winked, and waved at me as I walked out, Ken Brown. And I thought, I'd love to have a job where I interview people. 20 years on to that very day, I'm in a radio studio with Ken Brown, reliving that day. And he said, "What were you doing that day, Tim?" I said, "Well, it's a long story."
Well, fascinating. Is that something that do you still do any kind of radio like guesting at all?
A little bit. Sadly, the radio world has been taken apart in recent times because the BBC have cut back to just breakfast show, mid-morning show. So there's hundreds or thousands of DJs, way more talented than me, that haven't got a job. So I'm glad that I did it when I did. But I'd like to go back one day to do something, and I'll just see how things progress for that. But maybe just being on podcasts with people like you is a real kind of privilege.
And I know BBC have done a feature on things like ADHD and mental health on their some of the radio shows I've listened to, which is great. So
There's also there's that panorama program, wasn't there, where the guy went in there and got diagnosed from some private people. But I think in some ways, although he might have a point about not every diagnosis is brilliant, I think it was a bit of a hatchet job in some ways, and he didn't really test out the NHS diagnosis system in amongst with what he did, and I'm not sure anybody came out of that very well. But I think the BBC are doing stuff. I think Nicky Campbell does a very good podcast called, I think, Different Minds, possibly, that he talks about all different mental health, that including his own struggles that he's had. I think he said his daughter had ADHD. So there's a lot out there that you can see and go with.
If we finish from where we started, talking about gifts of ADHD, some people call them superpowers, you call them gifts. Would you want to just say a couple of things that you'd say your ADHD has brought you, which is positive, that you plus as a gift?
I think the determination. So one thing is that the determination to be able to run my own business. Determination. I always wanted to be on the radio. Was told it wasn't possible, and I worked and worked and worked until I got there. And also that the fact that I just think people with ADHD perhaps are more attuned into their emotions and things. And when you know you've met the right person, because you must know with people with ADHD, when you meet someone for the first time, it's almost like you know more about them than a normal person does. So actually, when you meet people for the first time, you can kind of, I don't know what's, it's not a mind reading thing. I guess you read the body language, but almost straight away you know what they're thinking, sometimes before they do. So when you meet the right person, like when I met Catherine, we got together very quickly because, oh yeah, that's her. And so perhaps that was a big positive of ADHD.
Yeah. Remarkable woman and very inspiring. I love a chapter as well in the book, and support it be a support system right through for you to get through what you got through with the diagnosis of ADHD. So yeah, Tim, it's been an honor, pleasure having you on our podcast. And yeah, so for anyone out there, fancies listen to the book. Oh, listen to the book. Can you get it as an audiobook, by the way?
I'm in the process of reading it to do that. So it's going to hopefully be out later this year.
Okay, perfect. So anyway, I meant reading the book. It's called Sitting Still Timmy, A Lifetime of Undiagnosed ADHD by our guest today, Tim MacWilliam. Whereabouts are you based in the country? You mentioned about, is it Norwich or Norfolk?
Yeah, I'm placed just south of Norwich in Norfolk.
Okay, excellent. Right. Yeah, you Norwich City fan, you mentioned that.
Well, yeah, I am. Yeah, I moved here in the 1980s. Before that, I supported Reading. So I've still got looking at Reading and all their trials. But yeah, when I moved here, Reading were in the 4th division. Norwich were about to get into Europe, so there was no problem. But now, yeah. I guess Norwich City now got a local derby with Ipswich coming up, which I'm expecting to be difficult, I think.
Well, yeah, enjoy a lifetime of a Norwich City fan, and I'm sure we will connect again at some point, and I will be tracking your journey, and I'd love to keep you in touch as well if there is any platforms or things that I feel you could be involved in, be it being as a guest or giving talks. And I think that's a space that I feel is not really. I don't speak to a lot of people who've gone through the journey of being diagnosed late and are doing what you're doing, as I said, with writing the books and giving talks and going on podcasts. So I'd love for us to stay in touch and connect more. And and I want to track your journey as well. I want to see how this is all going to go.
I'm so delighted. Thank you so much, and thank you for being allowing me to be your guest today.
No problems at all. And yeah, go well. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Take care, Tim. Bye. See you later.
Bye.
Bye then. Bye.